Each year, more than 46 million Americans will seek emergency room treatment for an accidental injury, most of which are preventable. So, what are your risks, and who can you trust to protect you? This is Safety Matters with Russ Kenzior.
This is America's Slip and Fall Guy, Russ Kenzior. Thanks again for listening to my show. I'm joined here with my producer, Tony.
Hello, good morning.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
So, what's in the safety news? What's going on in the world again? Oh, let me guess.
Mr. Fauci.
Coronavirus. Did you know that California just surpassed New York as the number one state with more confirmed coronavirus cases?
Didn't know that.
Yep. California now has 409,000 confirmed cases of the virus, overtaking New York, which was the nation's longtime leader. And fourth most populous state, now just has over 408,000 cases, according to Johns Hopkins University. In third place is Florida, just in case you want to know, with 370,000 confirmed cases. New York, however, still leads the nation in coronavirus-related deaths with more than 32,500, while neighboring New Jersey, which ranks number 2 in deaths, 15,700, even though it's number 11 in population. So they got a much higher death ratio than other states. But California, with a population of 39.5 million people, ranks number 4 in deaths, 7,900, again, according to Johns Hopkins University. So you mentioned Tony Fauci, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Well, he's in the news. Dr. Fauci was praising New York's coronavirus response, saying they did it correctly. That's a quote. He did an interview last week with PBS where he said many parts of the United States didn't go through enough or didn't do enough to combat the coronavirus, but New York State did. And here's a quote. "We've got to do the things that are very clear that we need to do to turn this around," Fauci told PBS NewsHour. "Remember, we can do it. We know that when you do it properly, you bring down those cases. We've done it in New York."
Yep.
It's kind of a odd kind of highlighting of a state that has the most number of deaths to hold them out as the poster child in the states that are doing it right or doing it the best. But again, it's a lot of confusing information. In fact, if you listen to Fox News Sunday with Chris Walls, I don't know if you ever listen to Fox News Sunday.
Yes, I do.
Interesting interview. He interviewed Dr. Tom Inglesby, who's the Director of Health Security at Johns Hopkins University, about the coronavirus and the trends where the number of people who are contracting the virus or being tested positive are going up, but the number of fatalities are actually going down. And here's what he had to say.
Look at the yellow line here. That's not the new cases. That's the number of deaths. You can see that spiked in mid-April, has come down sharply, although there has been an increase in deaths in the last week, more than 800 the last few days. How much comfort should we take, Doctor, in the decrease in deaths against this huge increase in cases?
I don't think we should take any comfort in that number.
It doesn't surprise me.
There you go. There you have it. So New York is doing the best job, highlighted by Dr. Fauci, even though they have the greatest number of deaths. And maybe he meant since everyone died, they're doing a better job. Then you have the head of research here at Johns Hopkins University. Not happy at all that the number of fatalities have dropped, I think, 75% since April. So how do you win? How do you? I mean, what do you? What is success? It's like the goalposts keep being moved.
It's just not good enough.
Wall Street Journal did a story 6 months into the pandemic. Researchers are now honing in on an answer to one of the basic questions about the virus, and that is, how deadly is it? Again, this is from Wall Street Journal, July 21st. Brianna Abbott and Jason Douglas were the writers. It goes on to state that research examining deaths out of the total number of infections, which includes unreported cases, suggests, notice the term, suggests, kind of a
Like a theory?
Yeah, we think that COVID-19 kills from around 0.3% to 1.5% of people infected. Most studies put the rate between 0.5% and 1%, meaning that for every 1,000 people, for every 1,000 people that get infected, 5 to 10 will die on average. Pretty low number. They go on to talk about a comparison of 26 other studies that estimated the disease infection fatality rate, again, getting infected and dying, found varying results, but pinpointed an overall rate of around 6.8 deaths per 1,000. Called 7 people out of 1,000 will die. The estimates suggest the new coronavirus is deadlier than the seasonal flu, though not as lethal as Ebola or other infectious diseases that have emerged in the recent years. And here's a great point. The coronavirus is killing more people than the deadlier diseases, in part because it's more infectious. That's kind of the key here. It's the highly infectious nature of this disease that's really causing a lot of havoc. So last show we talked a little bit about masks. Remember that? We talked about face masks?
Yes,
and
we
so
did.
Wall Street Journal has another story entitled "Face Masks Really Do Matter. The Scientific Evidence is Growing." And this was, again, published on July the 18th by Caitlin McCabe. It says, face masks are emerging as one of the most powerful weapons to fight the novel coronavirus. With growing evidence that facial coverings, again, remember the term facial coverings, not face masks, help prevent transmission even if an infected wearer is close in contact with other people. So if you're really even close, they say this is starting to work. The research goes on to talk about, in the absence of widespread availability of those N95 masks, remember those are the ones
that we can't get.
Ones you can't get, but all the medical professionals are getting them, and rightfully so. In light of that, the research shows that there is some hope. There is some hope. And by the way, when we say research, let's be clear. This is research that was published last month in the Journal of Physics and Fluids. And it states that researchers at Florida Atlantic University found that of the readily accessible facial coverings they studied, a well-fitted, homemade, stitched mask comprising 2 layers of cotton quilting fabric was most effective for reducing the forward spread of droplets. The research was conducted using a mannequin's head, an air compressor, and a smoke generator that mechanically simulated a cough. So I guess this is how...
So a mannequin was used.
A mannequin with an air compressor and a smoke generator.
Gotcha.
So that's the basis of this study. They actually didn't test real people.
Gotcha.
The study found that aerosol-sized droplets expelled from the mannequin with the double-layered cotton mask traveled forward about 2.5 inches on average, and that most of the leakage escaped from the gaps between the nose and face. Loosely fitting facial coverings, including a folded cotton handkerchief with ear loops, as well as a bandana, were less helpful, the study found. With those masks, droplets traveled on average 1.25 feet to 3.5 feet. So it's almost 3.5 feet. Droplets can go. And then it says that in contrast, the study found droplets traveled about 8 inches on average with an off-the-shelf cone-shaped mask, which also are pretty difficult to get. So, latest research on face masks, facial coverings, say there's some hope. They do work. But first question that came to mind when I read that is, what about the airlines? I mean, I'm sitting on a plane. There's somebody in the middle seat next to me, or I'm in the middle seat, depending on the flight. I'm certainly within a foot, right?
Yeah.
The guy next to me.
Yeah.
And if these droplets can travel 1.5 to 3.5, feet, I got to imagine I'm being exposed, especially since you're on a plane that they recirculate the air, right? They don't really filter it.
Right.
And it's a long flight.
Plus it squeezes out from the side.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Just what the airline industry needs, huh?
Yeah, I know.
So when we come back, I would like to read a message I received from one of our listeners, Diana, who's a registered nurse, who shares her thoughts on where we are with the coronavirus and really what as a medical professional, she's hearing. So when we come back, we'll be hearing from her.
You are listening to Russ Kenzier, Safety Matters. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Safety Matters with Russ Kenzier. I'm joined by my producer, Tony.
Good morning.
Got an interesting message from our last show, sent to me from Diana.
Was it an email?
It was an email or text, I forgot. But came in right after the show, and it's from a nurse, registered nurse, who said, I don't believe the numbers. Cases are being counted, for example, multiple times for one individual. Swabs have been sent in that weren't used and came back positive. People going to the ER that aren't tested were tested negative later.
So she said that blank, without any swipe or anything, were sent out, and they came back positive?
Yeah. It goes on to say that people going to the ER that aren't tested or tested negative or later said they were in contact with someone that had COVID are all coded as a case. So, okay, didn't know that. Hospitals have a financial reason for this. She goes on to say they get reimbursed at a higher amount. I get emails daily from hospital coding and other organizations. It's very clear that what they're doing. They're trying to make up for all the revenue they lost from the shutdown. The tests aren't reliable. Sites are reporting 100% positives, and data is being shown to reflect more numbers of cases than exist, and they ignore death rates, which are lower. She uses an example. She says, in Texas, there was a huge funeral celebration for George Floyd in Houston. There were protesters and rioters in the major cities, which result in predominant age group of 19 to 30-year-olds who are now infected. But you will never hear that in the media. We have more incidents and death rates from the flu every year, and that's with a vaccine. She goes on to conclude that by being cautious and maintaining good nutrition, sleep, and general health should be stressed more.
And that's what you said last week.
That's what we talked about.
Just the overall attitude.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll say it again, just everybody have a good attitude. Just stay positive. Don't worry, okay? Just do what you can. Protect yourself. We now know that face masks, again, have some benefit. Wear the best kind you can when you can. But be very cautious when you're hearing these numbers and predictions. Again, like in the previous segment, you have, Dr. Fauci praising New York that had the highest number of deaths and just got surpassed by California's positive tests. I mean, as the model. Well, that's kind of counterintuitive. And then you have the head of research at Johns Hopkins not happy with 75% reduction in deaths.
I don't think they'll be happy with anything.
I mean, where do you go? Where do you go with that? So take care of yourself. There is a growing number of winners and losers, in case you've been paying attention. There's some people, Tony, making some money off of this,
Face mask.
Yeah, the PPE guys. Face masks, face shields. Have you seen the plastic face shields people are now wearing?
Yeah, I think we're going to be like the Jetsons. We're just going to wear the globe on our head.
Yeah, the bubble.
The bubble.
Gloves. Obviously, big box retailers. Amazon. Boy, Amazon's been really winning in this, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been striking it out. I mean, like hitting through the roof on the stock market. But
remember when I read last week, there is a chance that you can get the coronavirus by just touching that box when it arrives at your door. 1%. It's a one on a scale from 1 to 9.
That's a 1.
Touching the mail is a 1. Yeah. Well, I assume that would be touching the box. So big box retailers, winners. Small retailers, well, those are the losers. Big chain restaurants with drive-thrus.
They win.
Oh boy, they're busy. But the little guy, the little, independent dine-in restaurants.
They keep them shut.
Well, and they'll probably be gone when it's all said and done. Another big winner are government workers. I mean, they're all getting paid, getting their checks, right?
Even though they're at home.
They're shut down. But the small self-employed business is being crushed. Diana brings up a good point. Hospitals may be a big winner when it's all said and done.
Maybe double dipping.
Maybe auditing coming in the next year that might reflect, oops, things weren't quite what they thought. And again, go figure. Hospitals are a business, and if the federal government has money that they're handing out, of course they're going to be there saying, "Yeah, we got a bed for you. Come on in." Well, I'll tell you, this is the one that really gets me is the toilet paper. Toilet paper, people. My God, if you're manufacturing toilet paper, whew, man, you got to have a big bottom line this year.
I still go to the store, and there's not much of a selection out there. Very minimal.
Yeah, I know they used to.
Paper towels, the same thing. It's
Yeah, they limited. Remember, you had a limit of one per customer. But yeah, I mean, paper towels, toilet paper, cleaning products, disinfectants, all the stuff you use to disinfect your house. They are really, really booming. Hand sanitizers.
We had a little segment last week on that, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, some news.
It's all those, all the alcohol and grain people kind of went into the hand sanitizer business.
Yeah, I mean, all the companies that were distilling spirits, making alcohol, meaning for drinking, whiskey, scotch, vodka, that kind of thing.
Is that why the last one I pulled out, I opened up, it smelled like a margarita?
Actually, we're going to talk about that. In fact, there's a website that I subscribe to. I get their newsletters. It's called cleanlink.com. It's a blog, I guess, or a newsletter that comes from the cleaning industry, the janitorial industry.
Gotcha.
And it's interesting to learn about coronavirus, the subject from the folks in the maintenance janitorial industry. But 4 dead, 26 sickened by hand sanitizers, being reported by cleanlink.com. Dr. Steve Dudley, director of Arizona Poison and Drug Information Center, tells Arizona Central that most of the people hospitalized were between the ages of 30 and 40 and say they consumed the hand sanitizer to get drunk. Symptoms suffered by those who survived included problems with vision, changes to mental status. I'm sure a lot more than that. Dudley says the discovery that the hand sanitizer being consumed is methanol-based. That's what we talked about last time. Is alarming because people consuming hand sanitizer to become intoxicated, go figure people do that, have typically used the more common ethanol-based hand sanitizer. And since ethanol is commonly found in alcohol, most people who drink the hand sanitizer featuring ethanol won't end up in the hospital, says Dudley. So there's consequences of the hand sanitizer. Remember, we also talked last week about that methanol making people sick. When you get it on your hands, it absorbs into your skin. So as you're trying to stay one step ahead of the coronavirus, here we go, just having to worry about, the unintended consequences. You mentioned hand sanitizer stinking. I've noticed that too. You go into a lot of places and they have the hand sanitizer out front.
Yeah.
You take a pump or two and it doesn't even feel.
Yeah, I know.
It doesn't even feel like hand sanitizer. There's actually some information out on there entitled "Why Some Hand Sanitizers Stink." Again, from cleanlink.com. What's the reason? It says, well, according to experts, the rotten garbage or tequila-like scent is the result of the ethanol.
See, I told you.
In the hand sanitizer, which is made usually from using corn, sugarcane, beets, or other organic items. It goes on to say the stink occurs from using denatured ethanol, which costs less to use than ethanol, and which has been filtered. So again, have you bought hand sanitizer?
It's expensive.
Really?
A little tiny bottle.
Isn't it?
It's like, it's almost like the same bottle you buy for your eye drops,
Yeah, it's like $5.
$5.
Yeah. Well, and you can see it's now big business, right? So another winner, I guess, the winners and losers is the folks, making ethanol, methanol, hand cleaners. Can we just get to alcohol?
Yeah.
Can we just go back to alcohol? I mean, that's what really works anyhow.
Absolutely.
And again, we reported that last week that federal government's with recalling 65, 75, I think it's up to companies that are producing these hand sanitizers for all these different reasons. I doubt it has anything to do with people drinking it. I didn't know people did that, but apparently they do. So
Go figure.
Go figure. That's the Corona update. When we come back from the break, we're going to be talking about a common problem here in Texas, which is sun damage, skin damage, melanoma,
Skin cancer.
skin cancer, skin cancer. So when we come back, we will be talking about the environmental risk of the sun.
So don't go into the sun.
Yeah, not yet.
You are listening to Russ Kenzier. Safety Matters. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Safety Matters. We've been covering the coronavirus and want to segue into another environmental hazard, probably one that affects more people than anything here in Texas, and that's
The sun.
The sun. The sun. I mean, going into the sun, which we have no choice, has unintended safety consequences, many of which we know. The primary one is melanoma, skin cancer. And we, of course, are repeatedly told to prevent exposure, of the sun to minimize the likelihood of getting skin cancer. And that's good advice. I remember every time I go to my skin doctor, he'll say, well, all the skin damage people get when they get older is damage that you got when you were a kid running around outside. And I grew up in the city of Chicago. You're a New Yorker. A little bit different. But yeah, so all the exposure to the sun you got in your youth kind of plays out in your older years. So here we are. If you were to take a guess, Tony, how many people in the world have been diagnosed with a melanoma that currently have an active level of disease? How many people do you think that is?
30,000.
30,000. Worldwide.
Oh, worldwide.
Yeah, worldwide. How many people in the world have a skin cancer, diagnosed actively with skin cancer right now on the planet?
1 million. Oh, jeez.
No, 3.1 million.
Ooh.
Yeah, 3.1.
Hey, so I get the buzzer?
You got the buzzer. In fact, you got it twice. In fact, there's over 200,000 new cases each and every year. So most of it comes from UV light. And most of the people that have the highest risk are fair-skinned, light-skinned, low level of melanin, and many of them have a immune deficiency, poor immune system. They tend to be at the highest risk. So if you're fair-skinned and have a weak immune system, you are particularly more vulnerable.
But this sounds just like the corona.
Well, it's all risk. It's all risk. That's what the show's about. You can't avoid going into the sun. And by the way, there's benefits to going into the sun, right? Vitamin D, that kind of thing, which you need. But you got to manage it. You got to balance it. So understand the risks.
So are they going to stop us from going to the beach?
Well, that may be next. Remember, you can't go to the beach if you have coronavirus. So maybe they're going to try to help you prevent getting sun damage by way of protecting you from corona. Another question. Which countries in the world have the highest rate?
Am I going to get the buzzer if I...
Yes, you probably will.
All right, so I would say,
What is the highest rate?
England.
Australia.
Close.
You are close.
The cousins.
Yeah, I mean, they still have the Queen on their money. Australia and New Zealand have the highest rates in the world. Less common are Asia, Africa, and Latin America.
Yeah.
In the United States, melanomas occur about 1.6 times more often in men than women. Did you know that?
Nope.
Yep. Where do you think women are most likely to get a melanoma skin cancer? What part of their body?
On their arms. Am I going to get the buzzer? Their legs.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
There you go. How about men? Where do men get skin cancers?
On their shoulders. Their back.
Yeah, well, good. There you go.
There we go.
On their backs. Most are generated, or many are connected to the development of mold. So you might have a mole that becomes cancerous. Some of this is genetic, right? Some people have a higher propensity to.
Again, this still sounds like the corona.
Well, you never know. So what do most people think you should do when you go into the sun? What safeguard should you take?
Wear sunscreen.
Very good. Sunscreen. How many people? I mean, look, when my kids were little, we just lathered them up. Out the door they went. I mean,
they're all white.
They're totally white. I mean,
see their beady eyes.
But guess what?
What?
Doesn't work.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, tell us what the statistics say.
Well, we have a report from the Environmental Working Group, which is a consumer protection organization based out of Washington, non-for-profit group. And they report last May, that, there's no proof that sunscreens alone prevent most skin cancer. And by the way, that's why people use it, right, to prevent skin cancer.
Right.
The
higher the number, the more protection.
That's what I would think. Rates of melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, have tripled over the past 35 years, the study says. Most scientists and public health agencies, including the Food and Drug Administration itself, have found little evidence that the use of sunscreens in isolation from other sun protective measures prevent most types of skin cancer.
So what do you use?
Well, I'm not certain what they mean by other protective measures. Maybe it's a hat or an umbrella. They also say don't be fooled by the high sun protection factor, what you just said. Products with high sun protection factor, SPF, tempt people. They say it tempts people to apply too little sunscreen and stay in the sun too long. The FDA has proposed prohibiting the sale of sunscreens with SPF values greater than 60 plus and have called higher SPF values, quote, inherently misleading, end quote. But the agency has not issued a regulation that carries the force of law. So there you have it. May not work. But wait, it gets worse.
Oh, no, don't tell me.
Yeah. Did you know that the common sunscreen additive, most common, is vitamin A?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Did you know that vitamin A actually speeds up the development of skin cancer?
All right.
Yeah, it says here that retinol palmitate is an antioxidant that combats skin aging. But studies by federal government scientists indicate that it may trigger development of skin tumors and lesions when used on skin in the presence of sunlight. Okay, so, wow. The study also says that some of the sunscreen ingredients, other ingredients, disrupt hormones and cause skin allergies. Sunscreen is designed to be applied to large portions of the body several times per day. Sunscreen ingredients soak through the skin and can be detected in human blood, urine, and even breast milk. The story goes on to say that several commonly used ingredients appear to block or mimic hormones, and others cause allergic reactions on sensitive skin. The FDA's sunscreen rules grandfathered in sunscreen active ingredients that were already on the market, and that the agency has never reviewed evidence of ill effects of all ingredients used in sunscreens.
So, Russ, what's the solution?
Well, there is one good point. Again, it's if you're out in the sun, you get vitamin D. Vitamin D is really important, but it's a trade-off.
It's going to be like what Grandma used to tell us.
There you go. Yeah, let's go back to Grandma and Grandpa. What do they say? Put a hat on, cover your shirt, long sleeve, right? Just cover your skin.
Right.
With clothing. In fact, when I moved to Texas, I was always shocked. Like, man, all these people are so hot out.
Why are they wearing pants?
Yeah, why are they wearing long pants and shirts? Well, that's why. Because protecting your skin with clothing, specifically clothing that has a UV benefit, seems to work the best. You don't have to put chemicals on you. And if you do, understand that as you're trying to prevent getting sun exposure, to reduce your chances of getting skin cancer, you are exposing your skin and your body to other health risks. And that's kind of where we are.
Risk and management.
Risk and management. So when we come back, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories, or actually one story, that kind of segues into this. And we're going to be talking about risks of you being hurt on the job when we come back.
You are listening to Russ Kenzier. Safety Matters. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Safety Matters. This is Russ Kenzior. We've been talking about environmental factors that can lead to people either getting the coronavirus, sun exposure. There's really just an endless amount of environmental factors that can hurt people or even kill people. I remember a case I worked on, Tony. I do a lot of work as an expert.
Tell us a story, Russ.
I have a story. I had a case a number of years ago. It took place in a small town in the Midwest, and it was a case where a gentleman bought I guess it was a used or empty shopping center building, and he converted it into a laser tag facility. And if you remember, laser tag was pretty big back 10, 20 years ago. Anyhow, he bought the building, converted it, built the walls, the plywood walls, plywood floors, painted everything black, had the strobe lights and the neon and everything going. And one day, a young boy, little boy, I think 9 or 10, came in and was playing laser tag. And as he's running around, he ran down a ramp, which had a really steep slope, about a 30-degree slope. And as he hit the bottom of the ramp, he fell onto the floor. And the floor is made of plywood. And sticking out of the floor was a nail head. And so the boy skinned his knee and went to the owner of the facility who tried to clean it, put a Band-Aid on it, called his father and said, hey, you may want to come down here. He skinned his knee pretty badly. He may need a stitch or two. So his father came down. And everybody knew everybody. I mean, it was a small town. And so they took him to the local hospital, and the doctor had prepared the wound. Apparently he did need a stitch or two, sutured him up and sent him home. About 4 or 5 hours later, it was within the same day, he gets really bad. The little boy gets really, really sick. So sick they had to care flight him to one of the major cities in the area. And he got diagnosed at that hospital with the flesh-eating bacteria.
My goodness.
You've heard about that, right?
Yes, I have.
A lot of people hear about that. What I didn't know, and when I got retained in the case, I didn't know how common the flesh-eating bacteria really is. It's pretty common. I mean, we're swimming in different forms of bacteria, fungus, germs. I mean, just endless. I remember when I was, not to change the subject, remember the pictures that shows like the mites that live on your eyelashes? All the little bugs that are all over our body, the microscopic bugs, which kind of grosses you out. But this little boy got really, really sick. In fact, the flesh-eating bacteria went to his brain and destroyed part of his brain, so he is permanently impaired. And I got retained as an expert witness by the plaintiff.
Why? Because of the flooring?
Because of the flooring, yeah.
Gotcha.
The flooring having a nail head sticking up is not customary. You are to screw, well, construction work.
Yeah, and of course the incline, right?
Right. So the nail head sticking up was a problem. They should have used screws. And then the incline, the slope of the ramp.
Just like the one about the president, he didn't want to go down the.
Yes.
It was too slippery.
Yeah, that was also, that's interesting. That was on my.
And he was smart to ask somebody, hey, I don't think I want to go down this slope.
Yeah, that was on my Twitter feed. I put
and then they made fun of him.
Yeah, that was also a very steep slope. No handrail.
No handrail? I mean, and he's wearing those brand new shoes.
Yep.
They have no traction.
Yep.
It would have been a nice and.
Well, and we don't even know what the surface was. And
no.
And President Trump talked about all of that.
Right.
It was pretty steep slope and leather shoes, no handrail to hold on to, and apparently a very slippery ramp. Well, this was similar in the case I'm talking about. This was a plywood ramp, very steep. Of course, there's no handrails or guardrails. And the little boy just, picked up speed as you're going down, and you're running around. I mean, that's part of the game. And who would have thought that it would have been that severe of an lifelong disability. So they had hired me as an expert. I testified as it relates to the use of nails and the slope of slope of the ramp. And I'll never forget, in the course of the trial, I had to go to trial, and a question came from the defense attorney, well, Mr. Kenzie, are you saying that a 30-degree slope ramp would constitute an unreasonably dangerous condition? Or is that what you're saying? And I said, yeah. And, he asked me again. And whenever an attorney asks you a question on the stand more than one time, you kind of know he's going to come out with something. And he did. And he said, well, would it surprise you to know that this very courthouse has a ramp in its basement that has a 30-degree slope? And are you saying that a 30-degree slope is unreasonably dangerous? And, of course, I replied, yes. And again, I don't recall if it was 30 degrees or 30%, but it was a very steep slope. And either way, it's way beyond the code. And I said, yeah, it certainly is. He said, well, would it surprise you to know that in this very courthouse, there is a ramp in the basement that has a 30-degree or 30% slope. Are you saying that this courthouse was constructed in a way that is dangerous? And I, of course, said, well, yeah. I mean, if there's a ramp in the basement that has that steep of a slope of its ramp, it's clearly dangerous. So in the course of my testimony, I asked, hey, maybe it would be worthy or good for the jury to go down and look at the ramp and walk on it and judge for themselves. After all, that's their role. I mean, I'm an expert witness. I'm not there to render verdicts. I'm there to help the jury understand the nature of the standard. What is the standard?
So what did the jury do when they walked down this ramp?
Well, they never got to the ramp.
Why
Because
did they get down to the ramp?
I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because the bailiff walked around and whispered in the judge's ear, hey, that ramp is being removed because it's too steep, and we don't want anybody going down there because it was a construction site. And, of course, that was said, I believe, in front of the jury. And, wow, I mean, my testimony came to an abrupt end. But that's an example of an environmental factor like you have the flesh-eating bacteria connected to a slip and fall case. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, when the little boy went to the hospital and was treated by a doctor, well, he wasn't a doctor.
Oh, no.
Yeah, never passed the bar or whatever they call it, the licensing boards.
Right.
So he went and got treated by someone who was I guess had a medical degree, just never completed whatever they needed to at the end. And they said, had the hospital properly cleaned the wound when they brought the boy in, that none of this would have happened. But they didn't clean the wound properly. And so there were two lawsuits, one against the property owner and the second one against the hospital. And of course, I was involved in both of them because they were co-defendants. But little boy, 10 years old, who will be permanently and is permanently harmed by something as simple as a nail sticking out of a floor. And who would have thought that the flesh-eating bacteria was living on that head of the nail? But apparently it was. And so that's an example of just yet another environmental factor that comes up from time to time, and we just don't think about. We just don't really give a lot of thought to until it happens to you, right?
Yes.
That's what I always say, until it happens to you. I promised we were going to talk a little bit about workplace injuries.
Oh, no.
Yeah, workplace injuries. What do you think the number one form of workplace injury involving days away from work is? What do you think the number one reason why people have to take time off their job?
A slip. Oh, I knew I'd get that.
No. Overexertion. Yeah. People get hurt by just being overexerted. What do you think number two is?
Can I say it again? A slip. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Slips, trips, and falls
Yeah.
are number two. Injury rate of 23.9 per 10,000 full-time workers. Most at risk are people over the age of 55. And just about every industry is plagued by slips, trips, and falls. Typical days lost. How many days do you think people would take off for a slip, trip, and fall?
6 weeks.
12 days.
That's why falls aren't funny.
Oh, I like that. I should write a book like
I think you did.
Yeah. Same thing is true for overexertion, 12 days, lost days. Number three. What do you think number three? Third most reason why workers have to take time off the job. Sorry, you ran out of time. This is a tough one. Contact with objects or equipment. People getting hurt. By different objects.
Running into the sink or something.
Yeah, or getting hit by equipment, having a pallet jack or that sort of thing, industrial impact. But of the top three, overexertion, about 31.4% of all time off the job is from overexertion, 26.7% for slips, trips, and falls, and really close is contact with objects. That's 26.2%. But keep in mind, these are lots of people. For example, with slips, trips, and falls, that's 240,000
a year.
Just
in the United States?
Just in the United States. And it was for the year 2018. So there's a lot of people getting hurt as a result of slips, trips, and falls. Most people listening to this program would find that to be hard to believe.
I do.
But it's true. It's a really, really big problem. We'll be covering that probably on its own show one day, since most of my time is spent on slip, trip, and fall lawsuits. Total cost, work injury costs for the fiscal year 2018 totaled $170.8 billion. $170.8 billion. That's $1,100 per worker.
A lot of scaro.
Over $1 million
My goodness.
per death. And the per medically consulted injury, meaning the medical costs associated per injury, is $41,000.
Wow.
Cost of medical treatment. Days lost, 103 million days lost. That's productivity. That's a big problem because we need productivity. The more productive our economic base is, the more revenue they generate, the better it is for everybody, including the workers, the companies, etc. There was over 70 million days lost due to worker injuries, and it's expected that 33 million, and the numbers continue to rise. Next week when we come back, I'm going to spend more time talking not only about workplace injuries and the statistics, but injuries at home, how you and your family can stay safe at home, and what are the most common causes of injury and fatalities in the household. So until then, this has been America's Slip and Fall Guy, Russ Kenzior, thanking you again for participating, and from me and my producer, Tony.
Have a good week.
I hope you enjoyed today's show and would love to hear from you. If you have a question that you'd like me to answer or would like to suggest a show topic, you can email me at russ@thesafetymattersshow.com. My Slip and Fall Guy podcast is available on either Apple or Google Podcasts. And if you'd like to learn more about my work as an expert witness or purchase one of my books, please visit my website at tractionexperts.com. Until then, have a safe day.